welcome back to my channel. I've been busy the last couple of weeks just trying to organise things, trying to get things sorted out for my main channel and stuff, where I use my real name, not my nom de plume for here, and just trying to get back into just catching up with writing, catching up with reading, trying to get all my reviews done and dusted so that I can get them all posted, and at the same time I'm also job hunting. There's a lot going on. So today's video, it's not going to be very good. I do apologise for that. At some point in the future, I would like to film a much better updated version of my writing journals, but today I'm just going to be showing you guys my writing journals and the sort of things I put in them, and then go over super quickly what I do with the story grid, which you guys will see, and I'll give you guys an example. If you like the idea of the story gridding process, I would highly recommend checking out the podcast, which I absolutely love, but then I'm also in the middle of trying to edit a video that I've already done on an example story grid and a story that I'm writing alongside how I write a poem and how I edit it to get it from crappy, terrible poem with initial ideas to a much better piece of work later on. So I've got those two videos coming out, so bear that in mind. But for now, it's just a quick look at some of my journals. If you do have any suggestions of what else I could be putting in my journals, because like I've said more than once on this channel, I am teaching myself creative writing. I'm teaching myself all of this. If there's anything that I'm missing, any information pages that I should have, any hashtags that I should be having listed, or books that I should really check out and things like that, please put them down below so that I can add them to my various journals. So yeah, without further ado, here are my journals. These are some of my journals. I love journaling. Journaling's a lot of fun for me. Journaling is literally therapy for me. And from a creative point of view, it means that I get to do an awful lot of brain dumping, which is a great excuse to get lots of journals. And yeah, I just love journaling. My journals are not pretty. I treat them the same way that I did back when I've started writing journals. There's just words on a page, and that's just kind of how it is. I think the most spontaneous that I get is using fountain pens every so often. So I'll show you an example of what I mean by using fountain pens for the sake of using different colors. But no, you don't have to use fountain pens. It was a requirement to get into middle school back when I was younger, to use fountain pens in order to get like lower school kids to have much neater handwriting. But these are my favorite fountain pens. These are two Lammies, because I love demonstrators, like they're see-through. I love them. Two Lammies, and then I've got a TWSBI Eco, which I absolutely love. And then I carry with me usually just one notebook, because it depends on how many pens I can fit into that carry case. Usually just one notebook with me out and about. I throw it in my bag and I'm good to go. It always means I've got a pen, and if inspiration ever hits me at any time, it means I can just whip out my notebook and just quickly note something down. Or if I've learnt a new word, like on this page, for example, I can just note it down so that I can find out what the meaning is later on and then try and work with that word in some way or another. I've used the word narcoticize in a poem before, and I absolutely love that word. I don't know why, I just find it sexy. I find that word sexy. I like words, guys. I like words. So yeah, so if I'm out and about, I can just write down little bits of poetry, things like this, like little short bits. Poems that I absolutely love that I've written from years ago, I'll then transfer them into into these notebooks. This poem here, I wanted to publish it, but I kind of didn't, because the imagery is terrible and it's an awful poem and it sounds incredibly generic and hipster-like, and I hate it. But it's good to have that reminder, to kind of remind myself not to write crappy poetry. So it's still good for that sense, but it's more of a personal thing now. But I've had these little ones for a little while. These two are slightly different sizes. They're both pocket size, but they're both from the company Moleskine or Moleskine, however you want to say it. But this one's obviously slightly thicker, and I just like the bendiness of it. At first, because for years and years, I've always used Moleskine notebooks as my journals and my go-to kind of like brain dump spaces. But I've always bought the black ones with the hard cover. And then I only came across the soft cover ones when I started working on my dissertation back in 2015, when I noticed that one of my professors she uses them consistently for every single one of her classes. She uses the very large soft covers. And I'd always seen them in the store, but I never thought about buying them. And when I saw her using them and how easy and how nice they look when you kind of open them up, because they're so good at being like flat laid, they're just so easy. I was like, okay, I'm convinced I need to go and buy those notebooks. And ever since then, I've just been buying a lot of soft cover Moleskines since then. It's just my kind of go-to. I just prefer Moleskines. I just like the paper and the size, and I like the color, and it's just what I'm used to. It's just what I do. But yeah, so these ones are the tiny ones. These ones I kind of, like I said, I kind of take these ones out. I kind of grab and go, put little bits of like creativity in there. Nothing too long. Like I won't write like passage after passage after passage of like a fictional novel or anything like that. But I will write down notes. Even if it does take a few pages, I will write down notes of the scene that I would like to write when I'm back home, or when I get a moment like to myself to be able to sit and write something. I can write down whatever has come to me inspiration-wise. But I'll put these ones over here because they aren't the ones that I wanted to show you because of the water damage that we had recently. So I've misplaced the other ones that I have. I don't know where they are, so I'm just gonna move on. The next journal I'm going to show you is this blue Leuchtturm 1917 journal. It's a dotted one. I don't know. I wanted to try something different that wasn't a Moleskine, and I wanted to get a different color because I thought at the time, with my studying and everything and my general journaling and then stuff from my other channel, I thought, let me get a different color that can just be for creative endeavors and let it be from a different company and blah, blah, blah. Like there was a good logical reason for why I ended up getting this particular journal. But I didn't read the information, and the information would have said, like the paper on it would have said it was dotted, not lined. And I just didn't read that. It was part of my birthday gift as well that I got from my husband. And I honestly, I failed. I've never owned a Leuchtturm that has lines in it before, so I don't know what that would feel like. But this one is dotted, and I hate it. I hate dots. So I've had this one since 2015. This is how much paper I have yet to use. It's been 5 years, guys. This is how much paper I have yet to use. I hate this notebook. I hate it. I don't like dots. I thought they were, again, it was a very logical thing. I thought because when I realized it was dotted, I was like, that's fine. I can put in word counters. I can chart my progress. I can, oh my God, I can draw boxes for things, and I can do story grids better and all that kind of stuff. And oh my God, as time went on, I hated it so much. And I really did try with this notebook. I couldn't do it. I don't even remember what year I got to. It's 2017. Hold on. I feel like it wasn't 2017 though. 2019. So late last year was the last time I wrote anything in it. What did it say? Gosh. I hate this notebook so much. I hate it. I hate this journal. Use it for writing lists or dumps. Yeah, so I just, I hate this one. I hate it. I tried. I really did try. I just couldn't get on with it. But yeah, anyway, so as far as like lists and things are concerned, this is one of my master lists of names. So I'll put down names that I really, really, really like. That I would like to then use in the future for like future stories or poems or whatever, any other kind of creative endeavor, I'll put them here. I have an even longer list that I need to transfer over to my main journal that I've put on my phone, which consists of first names and middle names, and also a list of surnames. So it's things like that, like lists and things for cultural influences. I'm trying to go for names that aren't so generic. So no Adams, no Sarahs, no Thomases, no Lukes, because those are really common and kind of like already well-known names. I need to have names that are kind of unforgettable in a way, that kind of cause a reader to sort of like stumble a little bit because they want to try and learn this character's name a little bit, and then it helps them kind of remember that character from that point on. So those are the kind of names that I'm trying to go for. Writing prompts and things. Oh my god, immigration, long distance. Yeah, I haven't looked at this in a while. Writing checklists, like the rules and regulations, I guess you could say, around various genres, so romance, thrillers, women's lit, that kind of stuff, to keep myself sort of like going. Character development from other writers and what they've done, just bits of advice. This is basically what this journal ended up becoming, just a sort of a journal where I could put down ideas, do location scouting and put photos and things, but also just put down just general advice, because like I said, I'm teaching myself creative writing. So this just ended up starting out as this kind of journal that was supposed to help educate me and chart my progress as the years went on, but obviously it didn't work out that way. So let me just show you a couple of quick examples and then I can move on. So location scouting was a big thing. I'm working on an immigration novel which is supposed to fall under the genre of literary fiction, but I'm taking my absolute time with it. And I started it back in 2014, going on 2015. And the last time I was in Toronto was 2015 for a whole month. So what I was doing was going around and just grabbing photos every time we were out and about. We lived over on the west side of Toronto for a while. So it meant that every time I was out and about, I could get used to all the streets and the roads and try and look for like iconic things like statues and certain benches and parks and things, so that I could write about them, write about the experience of being a newbie to Toronto, write about all of that stuff for the protagonist of that particular book that I'm still working on. So it was really handy then to just go around and get photos and things and then really develop that story. I also developed, because I was working on my dissertation at the time, I also developed a really good habit of every time I came up with a character's name and then a synopsis that went along with that character, or just a book title, or I felt the inspiration because of a particular genre, because of books that I was reading or films that I'd been watching at the time, I would then make it a habit to write down the ideas that I had. And again, sort of see it as more of like an educational and like kind of a learning experience for myself, and then just leave it. If I couldn't go beyond that and actually start a document, I would then just leave it. As long as I'd physically written it down, I was in a good place. The reason why that became a habit was because during my dissertation, which was all about Jeffrey Eugenides' works, Jeffrey Eugenides did state in a video that when he comes up with stories, it's usually because he gets the characters' names first and he kind of gets their personalities, but he doesn't know what story they're supposed to be in. So he'll write down these characters, do a whole dossier on each of these characters, and then he'll put them in a top drawer in a box somewhere and just kind of leave them. Later on, when he starts working on a new novel or a new manuscript of some kind, and he hasn't quite got the right characters in the story, he'll then go back to that dossier and then pull out those characters and say, yeah, okay, I've written at least 2 characters here from like a few years ago. They would fit perfectly in this particular novel. So that's kind of what he does. And I thought that was kind of helpful. So I've kind of developed it for myself for characters as well as book titles or just particular genres. Like I said, at the same time, this was back in 2015 that I got this particular journal. So I was still very much at university still. I was about to start my 3rd year, which was the dissertation year, but a lot of information that I'd picked up for that 3rd year from various seminars and lectures and things, I was then putting them in this particular notebook, as well as the larger moleskins behind here, which I'll show you in just a moment. Because again, literary theory, how to write an autobiography, how to write a biography, how to adapt poetry, how to adapt novels, how to write scripts better, how to be more creative with academic writing and that kind of stuff. I was putting them all in this particular journal, again, just because I wanted to teach myself more about creativity and being a better writer. So that's the kind of stuff that was in here. and more refreshers and reminders and stuff. Tarot card spreads that I'd found on the internet, but I never really used any of them, but they're there just in case I decide that I ever want to use them in the future, but I ended up developing my own anyway and using those. How to write a scene, again, good reminders that I picked up here and there. And it's just a whole collection of things. Like whenever we met writers, whenever I went to any seminars or public events where writers were discussing their own works and things, I would go along and get information directly from those particular authors and then come away feeling really good. This was a little bit of like a signing, but also I guess a bit of inspiration from the best-selling Australian author Kate Forsyth. I've met her twice because she was a good friend of one of my professors, so it was kind of like a favour that they did for each other. And I got to meet her the first time, and she knew that I was a writer because I told her, and yeah, she kind of said, keep going. Like, she gave us her story and what it meant for her to be a writer and how important it is to be a writer for her, and the life that she has lived from when she was really tiny, from when she was a tiny child to where she's at now. And it was a very inspirational story. So she was like, no matter what, I always kept writing. And that's just kind of one of the sentiments that really stayed with me. So yeah, it was really cool to see her again right before I left and moved to Canada full time. So yeah, it was really nice to see her again. The horror story that I mentioned very briefly earlier, this is a further development, like a year later. So even though I come up with a story, but I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to be doing with it, but I keep getting these flashes of images and scenes that I need to put down, I'll dump them all here. What ended up happening with this particular horror story is that it's no longer a horror story. It ended up becoming the first 2 books of the Wormwood Witches series. So I took elements from that particular from this particular brain dump, and I have been working with them ever since. But there are other elements with this particular brain dump that might prove quite fruitful in the future. So again, I'm not going to be deleting it, which is why I've also kind of kept it shut, because there are still some pretty good ideas in here that I would like to use in the future. So this is basically what ended up happening in here. I was just writing down a lot of titles, getting a lot of ideas for stories written down, and then just kind of leaving them and walking away, because once I've had a bit of time away, then I can come back with a fresh mind and then develop on them, like work on them a little bit more. This is a story grid. So basically I put all the scenes across the top here, scenes 1 all the way through to scene 6. And then I put all the acts down the side from act 1 all the way down. And then what I do is I try and then outline or at least plot out the story that I happen to be working on. And this is usually the method that I follow for my own personal stories. I like the idea of having 6 parts cut across 5 different acts. So for example, this is one story that I'm working on right now. The protagonist is all in red, her secondary character and love interest is all in green, and then what I would then do is work on a separate story grid where I then write in a completely different colour for the villain and all the interactions that the villain or other villains will have with the protagonist. So I know exactly what part of my story is going to be strong, where I might have plot holes, where I might have continuity errors, where I might have issues. If I have any spaces, it's because I couldn't think of anything, so then it gives me an opportunity to then rework where the positioning of some of the like narratives are going to be going and stuff like that. So it just allows me to really sit and think about the story that I'm working on. This again is my second literary fiction novel, but again, I'm taking my absolute sweet time with it. I'm not rushing it. I want to get all the other genre specific stuff out first. Yeah, it's just more stuff, just more about characters, like information about the characters, their connections with each other and stuff like that, plot ideas and synopsis stuff there. And then toward the end of this novel, because this journal, because I really hated the dots, it ended up becoming a case of every time a book title came to me or a character name came to me, I would then brain dump very quickly a synopsis for that thing, and again, just leave it. I'd give myself a few pages and then move on to the next story idea that I had, and then give myself a few pages and continue. But I fell out of love with this particular journal, and so I stopped using it. At the same time, I also fell out of love with the idea of being more of a social media styled writer, so pretty journals, word counts, following NaNoWriMo, that kind of stuff. It was around this time that I realised I'm just not one of those writers. I'm just too messy. So that's just kind of what goes in that particular journal, but I haven't touched it since. It's just one of those journals that whatever's there is there, and if I need it, I'll go back to it. But if I don't need it for anything, it just stays on the shelf. But it's always within reach if I do ever happen to pull it out and need it for anything. So it's always there. So while I was at university, I noticed that one of my professors was using the large soft cover moleskin notebooks for all of her lectures and seminars. And I just thought it was a nice looking notebook. I've been using moleskins for years by that point, and I'd always seen these ones around, but I never really felt the need to buy them because I was so used to using the hard covers. But after seeing her use a soft cover and then asking her opinions about it, and she said pretty much the same thing, she loves using the small ones, it just seemed more practical to use a much bigger one for much more deeper ideas, thoughts and notes and things. So I ended up buying one for my dissertation, which I'll show you very brief snippets of in a sec. And I don't know, there was just something, like she said, there was something really kind of studious and kind of practical about using a much bigger space rather than using like your traditional A4 size paper, because we use A4 in the UK. It just meant that you had a bit more width and it just felt a bit more intimate because it wasn't quite a square. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because of the colours of the page, or like of each page, like being like a weird sort of like off yellow colour. I don't know what it is, but there was just something so kind of like studious and important and intellectual about using a notebook like this. So I ended up using this one for my dissertation. Then I started putting in writing information after I'd finished university because the dissertation stuff didn't really take up a huge amount of space. This is about it. This is mostly all of the dissertation stuff at the front, and then about the same amount of stuff in the back to do with my bibliography and stuff. And then I had all this space in the middle that was just not being used for anything. So since then, I've used them as like my main go-tos for the creative aspect. I'll show you just very quickly the dissertation stuff. So it was a habit, again, having a contents page up at the front. Because that was supposed to help me with the organization of my dissertation. I thought for that entire year, I thought I was going to fill out this entire book. I didn't. I used a lot of my notes from here and ended up putting them all on a computer anyway. So I was using a computer alongside this one. But as I was reading books, I wanted to put notes and quotations down. So it was good to have a contents page just to identify which book I was working on for each chapter and such and so forth. So that's what I was doing. And then I would sort of like mark out a little bit of a sort of like a margin at the side to sort of indicate any quotes or anything, or where I can find particular quotes and passages so that I could refer to them in the actual dissertation itself. So I had these just kind of going throughout this particular notebook. It was really handy. I don't know what it was. It was just a very easy notebook to have and to sort of like put a lot of my information in. Yeah, more dissertation information. But it was just a really handy book, and I just liked it. And I've gone back to moleskins, I guess you could say. So that's kind of like what I've done. But as far as creative endeavours, in this particular book now, because it started out as more of a university notebook, I've kind of kept that since. So more of my critical theory stuff that I like to explore and things I tend to keep in this book, whereas I put more of the regular refreshers and creative writing, teaching information and stuff, stories, story grids, that kind of stuff just goes in this particular book. So this is still quite a fairly new book, this one. I haven't really used it as much because I've still been writing in this one, but that's about it. So I'll just give you a super quick flip for each of those. So writing tips, poetry collection contents, because I actually started working on another poetry collection like years ago, but I just never got around to actually doing it, and I ended up publishing some of those poems in my current collection instead. Again, just teaching myself things. So I guess you could just kind of like enjoy certain aspects of this, just notes and things, and the lovely colours. That was a map for Whittington. It's based on the town that I ended up growing up in, and then I needed to draw one based on London, but London just proved too big, so I ended up just creating something completely different. So these are like the early stages and some of the mid stages of the Wormwood Witches and the Whittington Chronicles stories that I'm going to be putting together, and the whole world building aspect, that's all in here. This one was dated 2019 in December, so that was only a few months ago, but I've developed more about the people and the tribes and things since then, so I just need to go back, grab all those information and bits that I've put down on my phone, and then copy them up into a lot more detail into this particular journal. So yeah, other beings, the history, you name it. I need to put all of like my fantasy stuff in here as well, because the fantasy novel that I'm working on as well, which I'm not paying a lot of attention to right now, is supposed to be like the precursor, the contextual aspect of the whole idea of the world of the Whittington Chronicles and the various stories within. More critical theory, lists and things and refreshers and whatnot that I had to go over again just for the sake of staying sane during the pandemic. So I went through all of these again as like a refresher. I think that's also kind of what pushed me with writing as well. When I got to study critical theory at university, I was then going away and thinking about certain essays and arguments that theorists were putting out, and I was saying, well, how can I adapt that theory into a story? Or how can I adapt that particular subject into a story? It just seemed like a very interesting thing to me. So that's why I kind of kept these two, especially this one, and decided to start working on, I guess, adaptations for those things. But that's all a big secret. I haven't started doing anything too public with those ones. Again, same thing kind of goes on. I have a map of the current TTC system. I think this is the right way. This is the right way of Toronto. So again, for location and location scouting and things like that, I know where I'm going, where I need to be and such. And I know what I need to write in order to make really convincing travel dialogues or travel sequences. So that's why I put that in there. And it's also just for me in general, although I actually do have an app on my phone. So when I'm actually traveling around for the sake of work or whatever, then it's totally fine. I'm still kind of deciding what I'm going to be putting more information of in this one, because I like each of my journals to have a particular subject or at least a particular topic in each one. So in this one, it's just general basics, just teaching myself creative writing in general, and that's what's in here. So again, I have contents pages up at the front, which I have like with these cool Japanese stickers. I can't remember the artist's name at all. But yeah, that's just in the front to kind of keep that habit going. And then I just go straight into writing tips and things that I didn't learn when I was at university, things that I would learn from videos and articles and various other sources. I would put things down in here to kind of keep myself grounded and keep myself within the right frame of mind when it comes to actually then plotting any outlines or anything like that. It just means that I get to kind of stay on top of everything as I'm learning. The other benefit of writing things down physically also means that I'm able to remember a lot of information. Whereas if I just read an article like my husband does, he can just read an article and he's got all the information like right there. And then I can ask him about that sort of stuff 5 years later and he'll still remember everything. Whereas for me, I don't remember things as well. So if I physically write things down, it means that I've actually then gone through the whole process of physically writing it down, physically working out the words, spelling them correctly, what notebook I put them in. There's a whole process, and I'm able to then remember the process, which will then give me an idea of what it was that I'd actually written down so I can try and remember. Really long-winded, I do apologize. But yeah, this is the most recent sort of like page that I've put in this particular journal, and it's just another outline. I'm just sort of going over my book one of Wormwood Witches so far to make sure that I am still sticking with the story grid that I'd actually put in here. And so far, I kind of have. But either way, I'm still charting and developing stuff, so I guess we'll see where we go from there. I was going to discuss this notebook, but I've realised now that time has just slipped by me. I can talk forever. What I might actually end up doing, because I kind of want to reset this journal, I might do a reset and do a whole separate video once I've done a bit more research about what other writers put into their writing journals and things. I might reset this whole journal. What I have in here so far is my calendar up at the front. I have a writing journal in the middle, and then I have a poetry journal toward the back. My writing journal in the middle also consists of master list of names, words that I like and such and so forth. It's supposed to be a combination of both the on-the-go brain dumpy type of journals that I have, but also the long form journals that I have a lot more information, a lot more long form stuff in. It's supposed to be like a combination of both. And I bought it with that intention, and I just kind of haven't used it in that way, especially for the last 18 or so months. So I might reset it, I don't know. But that's where you guys come in. If you guys also have physical writing journals that you keep on your phone, your laptop, physical books like this, you name it. If there's something that you feel that I'm missing, please let me know, because I'm not gonna know. I don't know. I think that's everything. Yeah, anyway, that is everything. Thanks for watching. Just moving my hands on the screen. Oh yeah. This just looks terrible. I don't know what I'm doing now. Nails. Okay, all right, bye. Is that the right way? I don't know. Bye.